Okay, so I'm getting ready to install the cylinder head. I cleaned up the cylinder head, blew out the screw holes with brake fluid and compressed air. That worked pretty well, cleaned everything up. Got the head gasket here ready to roll. Talked to the guy who did the cylinder head, and he said, you know, don't use any gasket lube or anything. He said these gaskets now, with the metal that's inside of them and stuff, these gaskets have come a long way. He said there's no need to add any gasket, liquid or lube or any gasket related liquids on here for the seal. He said the gasket should be just fine. So one thing I wanted to show you is I did find the top dead center where the pinhole is on the flywheel. And so we're looking at the tractor like this. If you come in on the exhaust side of, actually this is the, this would be the exhaust side, I believe, of the unit. Right down in here, there's this cap that's on here, and it sits right in here. Okay, basically when you pull that out, basically you can look in there at the big hole in the top and see the flywheel. You can see the big hole here and the little hole. The little hole, if you take just when you finally got it where you think top dead center is, actually wouldn't be necessarily top dead center, but where the flywheel, the number one cylinder, is at the top, you can stick like an Allen wrench in here. And if you rotate the flywheel, you can feel it'll be riding along, and all of a sudden it'll pop into a hole on the flywheel. And that's where the number one cylinder would be up. Obviously it has to be on the compression stroke, so you have to determine that too. And I think in previous videos I showed you how to do that. But at least you can get on the flywheel and put, the cylinder number one would be up. And so it's a good way of determining, at least helping determine top dead center. Okay, so now wanted to show you, I got the cylinder head back. Cost me, get this. So the guy I went to, I found a guy, and I'm near Syracuse. I found a guy in Cortland, New York, Precision Automotive. He's an old guy who has all the tools in his shop to cut heads and restore them. And got a hold of him from a farmer, and basically what he told me was, he said he does all of John Deere's heads here locally. John Deere, I guess what they'll do is you take your head to them, they'll ship it out to this guy, he'll do it, and they'll probably charge you double for it. And that's pretty much what he told me. But so this cylinder head cost me in total, it was $330 to have it. I had the cylinder head cut 5/1000. Well, let me just show you that. And if I lift this up real quick, you can see he got the cylinder head cut 5/1000 off it, which isn't a lot. He said that's not a lot, and he said that's not much at all, and we should be good. He checked. You have to check this distance from here to the top of the valve, and I guess there's a tolerance there. Mine were all out of tolerance, so he had to take out the valves and replace the valve seats underneath here for all of them. We put new valves in it while we were here. So, it makes sense why I was getting pretty poor compression. The valves on this were pretty well worn out. He looked at the underside of them right away, and he said, yeah, this tractor has some hours on it. He said probably it ran in the dust too, where a lot of dust and things got into the engine and probably wore these down a little bit faster. Because this is a 2014, but I heard that this tractor was run at a racetrack, so who knows? It was probably always out in the dirt and the dust when they were grading the track and stuff, and from the horses running, and I guess that might have done her in. But so all new valves, you could see he checked them all. He checked the tolerances of all of them. He said valve number one here, the guide that through which the valve moves was out of tolerance too. The valve just shook in the guide, so he had to drill that out, put a new guide in here. The rest of them were good though. So valves, valve seat, the one guide, the 5/1000ths on the head, and then on this side, everything. He said, you know, the springs are pretty damn cheap. Why don't we just go ahead and replace those? He said they look a little worn anyway because they were moving around a little bit. So he said let's replace those two. And there's a metering seal in here, they call it. We replaced that as well. So pretty much everything except for the keepers and the rotators on the top have all been replaced. And the head, he cleaned the head up and he said, you know, you're good to go. You're ready to roll. And one question I asked him, because I wasn't aware of this, and I said, listen, if you have to cut my cylinder head down 5/1000ths, I said my block, I'm worried that maybe that's out of tolerance too. Does that need to be cut? And the guy that's been doing this for 40 some years said, listen, he said it's very unlikely your block has any warpage at all. He said typically it's on the cylinder head, it's not on the block. I didn't know that. I mean, I'm just first timer doing this, so. He said, yeah, don't worry about that. Just, you know, get a good gasket on there and put her back on. So I'm gonna do that. So now $330, so that's everything. But don't forget, I already had the valves. I had the valve seats, and the metering seal. And I had the intake valve. So I pretty much had all the parts except for the springs and the guide that he used. But he had a bunch of guides there anyway, just boxes of them. So that's what he supplied, and that's what I supplied, and I got out of there for $330, not including tax, because I'm using this on a farm. So that's where we are. I thought that was a pretty good price. I mean, it gives me a lot of comfort knowing that this thing is clean, it's ready to roll. He said it's like new. You should get a lot of years out of it. Having this guy and his expertise look at this thing, I thought was paid huge dividends for me. He said it's ready to put on, so go ahead and put it on. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lift it up in there, get it down, and then I'll talk to you about torquing these bolts down on the head. All right, so I'm getting the bolts on the cylinder head right now. Obviously, I bought new bolts. Just wanted to give you for this 5065E. That's the part number for the cylinder head. Bolts to torque down are R85363. That gives you a package of 6 of these guys, I believe. So you need a couple bags because you need 14 bolts. So I needed 2 bags plus 2. They gave me 2 separate bolts outside the packages. So never ever use new ones. I'm sorry, never ever use old ones. I already discussed that. So you always want to dip them in engine oil. That's what the instructions say. I'm going to show you the instructions in a minute about torquing this baby down. Now I have 12 bolts in. I just have 2 to go here. So I'm going to just show you. So you know, I got 12 in. I got 2 bolts here. I'm just going to take the engine oil and dip it on the threads here. You can see it's dripping a little bit. I just run it down the thread here a little. I don't want too much excess oil on there. I might even just wipe aside and then just coat this with oil. I don't want any hydraulic pressure to be created when I'm tapping these babies down. I mean torquing them down. So I have 2 left here. I got 1 in the back here to do, and I'm using just this to get it down fast, but I'm not torquing it. I'm not torquing it all. I'm just getting it down, back it off. I just want it real loose in there. I don't want anything torqued down yet. You always want to get all the bolts in before you start torquing. You don't want to start torquing one and then, because this, you know, the cylinder needs to shift as you put these bolts in. All the bolts have to fit in there nice and comfortably. So you don't want to start torquing them down. You want to get them all in, just starting to get snug a little bit, and that's when you can start torquing. I do have a torque wrench with me. I'm going to get this last one in here. You always want to get a good quality torque wrench. We have to get up to 110 pound-feet, I believe. Back that one off a little. I think it's 100. Let's go look at that. We'll go look at the guidance now. So I have all the bolts in. all the way down. And the old timer who gave me the block bag said, you know, he'd be a little more conservative putting the cylinder head back on. And what I mean by that is take more torque intervals, use more torque intervals. So I'm going to do that, and I'll explain that here in a second. So these are so I've got the head gasket on, got everything ready to roll. Let's go over to the instructions. You know, because I'm listening to everybody, but I'm also following the instructions and using what the instructions tell me as a guide as well. So I'm back in the manual here. This manual is for the, I think I showed you guys this Powertech 2.9 liter for my type tractor, a 5065E. This is the one they gave me, and it's been pretty good, I'd have to say. Everything lines up. Now this is the engine. I want to clarify. This is the engine manual. They sell a couple of different manuals for tractors. You know, one's for the tractor itself, how to repair the tractor. This is just how to. This is just an engine repair manual. So I don't have all the other manuals yet for the other parts of the tractor. So this is specifically for the engine. Now let's get in here. I should just. Let's see if I have. I was just going to give you the book number if there was a book number on this, but let me back up here for a second. I guess it's down here in the corner. It's CTM125. Looks like it's probably a number for this manual. So anyway, I'm back on page 25-13. We're in group 13, I believe, if I'm correct on that. Anyway, installing cylinder head. There's some extra steps in here, just because the heads vary a little bit. But it says clean tapped holes in cylinder head. I used compressed air, they recommend that. I also squirted some brake fluid in there and worked. I used it, grabbed an Allen wrench that was about the size of the hole, but not nearly the size of where the threads are, and just rolled it around in there to get stuff loose, blew it out a few times. Alright, it says ensure that cam followers are present before the cylinder head installation. So those cam followers, as I discussed before, go down in the head itself. I guess some people forget that. You wouldn't want to get this whole damn thing back together and realize you got cam followers sitting on your workbench. It'd be a son of a bitch. You got to tear it back apart. But no, they're all in there and they're clean. I discussed that in previous videos. Alright, so it says install new cylinder head gasket dry without sealant. Okay, I'm doing that as well. The guy from the cylinder head shop recommended that. I have guide studs, so I'm not gonna read that. The guides are just the things that stick up in the cylinder or in the block that align with the cylinder head. So you basically slide the cylinder head right over those. It puts it right in place. I don't have to install guide studs. Position the cylinder head over guide studs and lower into place with cylinder block. I did that. Always use new screws to install the cylinder head. Yeah, you should. Dip new cap screws entirely in clean engine oil. Did that. I just didn't want them with excess oil. Forget the guide studs. They're in place and they stay there. Tighten cap screws in sequence to the torque specified, beginning with number 1, then torque turn to specified angle. Alright, so see what they're recommending here. Basically, let's forget about the torque pound-feet for a second, but the way they're doing this, if you look at that, there's number 1 right there, and they basically go in a circle like this when you're doing these. Okay, so you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So basically you go like this. You're doing circles like this, and you finish it up. Okay, that's how you torque them down in that sequence. Okay, and A, you can see, is the front of the engine here. So, you know, gives you an idea. So what they're saying here is they want first step torque. So you torque it to 75 pound-feet first. Okay. Then the second step is they want you to torque it to 110 pound-feet. So you go around once, do 75, come around again, do 110. And then recheck after 5 minutes. They want you to recheck torque at 110 pound-feet, right? And then the final step is to do a torque turn of 60 degrees, plus or minus 10 degrees. Okay, so basically 2 torque steps plus a wait time, and then re-torque. I'm sorry, do a torque turn, whichever way you want to say it. Now the guy at the shop said, the guy that did the cylinder head has been around forever. He goes, you know, he said you could do that. He said, you know, he feels more comfortable starting doing more of these steps. And he said what he would recommend is start a first torque step at like 10 pound-feet. He did say that, 10 pound-feet. And I said, okay. He said, just go around, just get them all to 10 pound-feet. And he said, after that, he said, I'd go up to like 30 pound-feet, work your way around again. And he said, I'd do 50 and, for a third time. And then he said he'd jump to 75. And then he'd go to probably 95. And then he'd go to 110. So, like, you know, what am I saying here? 6 or 7 torque down steps. He said he just feels more comfortable with that. He feels that distributes the load of the bolts better. You don't get isolated areas of stress from certain bolts. He thinks it minimizes that. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. But I'm still going to get it up to 110 eventually. And then I'm going to do that 60-degree turn. So that's how you do it. That's how you torque it down. That pretty much says it all. You know, you can maybe do some things a little differently, but that's pretty much it. And you know, as long as you have a torque wrench and you have a good torque wrench, this actually seems to be a pretty simple process here. So I'm going to go ahead and... Okay, so I got the rocker arm assembly on. That's the matter at hand right now. So the rocker arm assembly, first you need to put the rods in. The rods go in separately, right? And then the rods are what basically pushes on the cylinder, the valve basically. So, and you know, over there. So basically this bolt, there are 3 bolts. This bolt and this bolt hold this whole rocker arm assembly on. Okay. So what you want to do is get it set on there, get these sitting on your, you know, in position. But you don't want to tighten these down all the way yet. You want to just get this guy and just snug those 3 bolts down. What I mean is just by hand. You know, you just want to turn them by hand, and make sure everything's in position. You know, you don't want to torque these down until you know these adjustments are backed off on the rocker arm assembly, because you know, everything has to be adjusted here. It's not hard to do, and I'll show you how to do it. But you know, what you basically need to do, because you don't want to bend. You know, you crank on these guys and you torque them down. Well, if these are pushed all the way down, you're going to bend the rod. So then you're going to have a rod problem. And if you don't realize it, you know, when you're doing this, now you get the engine back together, and guess what? You're in trouble. You got to pull it all apart. So basically, what I've done is I just, you know, this screw. This is really an adjustment screw, but you know, you back these off, and you back off these. And now that the rocker arm is snug down there, you can see, look how much play I have in this guy. Right? So I know when I crank this down, this one is way out of adjustment, and there's a lot of room, so I can torque this down. All right? They're all like that. I loosened them all up. Okay, all the way over. All right, so now I can torque these down. Now, per the manual, okay, the manual, let's go over here. The manual says rocker arm assembly, right? It's position it on the engine, lubricate the rocker arms. I'll do that in a little bit. Tighten attaching cap screws to specifications. And this, if you see, it says 35 pound-feet for rocker arm support cap screw torque. 35 pound-feet. That's what it says right there. Okay, so we're going to go back over here. All right, first things first. I'm going to set this guy here. Hopefully you guys can see what I'm doing. I think you can. Let me just... There we go. Get this thing out of the way here. Okay. So, don't fall on me. Got a $500 camera here. I don't want the damn thing to fall. Alright, so I'm going to adjust the torque. This is basically a torque wrench. This is, I have two of them. This one goes from 0 to 100 pounds, and I have a larger one that goes to, I forget, 400 or 500 pounds. So this is just a small one. So 35 pound-feet, you know, what you do is as you turn, this thing moves. And basically it'll take it to the pound, and then that's when you stop pulling on it, okay? So I'm going to go, I already got these back to adjusted here. Basically, I'm going to check it, 35 pound-feet, that one's right on the money. Let me check this one. I already did this one too. I just want to check it again. Yep, that's right on the money. And now I'm gonna torque this guy down. Okay. So let's see. I'm watching the. No sense in showing it to you. This thing moves. That thing moves. When it gets to 35, I'll stop on it. Let's see. Keep going. Keep going. I'm at 30. Keep going. A little more. There you go. That's right about 35. Okay, so that one's done. So now you got those torqued down, right? You got the 3 bolts torqued down. So what you need to do at this point is now you got to adjust all these arms, which are all loose. Okay. Now, if you recall, because I'm top dead center, and I put marks on here so I didn't confuse myself. All right. So which ones are not in tension, right? Remember we went through this before. Which ones where the cam is turned in such a way that there isn't any pressure. That should be placed on the springs, or on the valve springs at this point, or the valve, right? I marked it. It was this guy. This guy is in tension, so I'm not going to adjust that one yet because I got to rotate the camshaft. I put a mark here. This one is not in tension. I can adjust that one, and I can adjust this one, but not the last one. Okay, and that is consistent with this previous diagram here. So I marked this one, this one, this one, and this one. The other ones, I can adjust all 4 of those right now, okay? And this says, alright, so valve clearance, let's go up here. Valve clearance. The valve clearance must be adjusted when engine is cold. Well, safe to say my engine's cold. So, you know, we talked about this, but basically let's go to the clearances here. Intake valve clearance. Intake valve. The intake valve is C, and the exhaust valve is B. Alright, so we're talking about this first one, the intake valve. And on this machine, on this Powertech 2.9 liter, the intake valve clearance is 0.35, I don't know if you can see it, 0.35 millimeters or 0.014 inches. Okay, so that is the intake valve. I'm going to do this one first, which is C. The intake valve, okay? So let's go back over here. This is pretty simple to do. As long as you have a feeler gauge, it's a piece of cake. So, you know, basically this tool I have is a feeler gauge, right? These are different gauges, different thicknesses, so you pick the one you want. All right, and I already have out the one I need, which is, I don't know if you can see that or not, but this is the one I need. It says 0.35 millimeters, all right, or 0.014 inches. I don't know if you can make that out, but that's what it says. So I pulled the one out I need. So basically, how you adjust this now is basically I got to put this under here. Here's the clearance, right? That's the clearance on the valve side, right? So now, because I have this in there, that's my feeler gauge. I want to be able to slide it out. You know, you want a little bit of, you know, you want to get you have to get a feel for it, but basically you just want to be able to slide this out. So I'm going to crank this down with the feeler in there, and then I'm going to be adjusted. All right, so getting back to adjusting this, I think I had a car pulling up the driveway, so I had to stop, but I'm going to slide this feeler in the intake valve on that side, and now I'm going to adjust. I'm going to back off the nut. Let me get the nut backed off here a little bit. Yeah, you bastard. There we go. All right, so we're going to stick this in here. Now you want to be able to. You want a little bit of force put on that feeler gauge as you pull it out, but you don't want a lot of force, right? That's the clearance right there. So I'm going to tighten down the screw. That, you can see I'm getting close, if you can make this out. Now, that's pulling there. It's a little too hard. I'm going to back off on that guy. I'd say, you want it nice and easy to be able to pull that baby out of there. So I would say right about there. So I'm going to keep that where it is. Now the screw is what makes the adjustment. The nut just holds the adjustment, right? So I'm going to crank down this nut right about there. And let me just get... It figures I don't have a wrench ready, huh? Let me see if I got lucky. Oh, how about that? Just by sight. Okay. So let's see. I'm gonna tighten down that nut, and bam! I think we are golden on this one. I'm gonna tighten that down pretty good. Let me see if there's a torque on those requirement. If so, I'm gonna be back on that. But let's see. So I'm gonna slide that in, slide it out. Boy, that feels pretty good. So that's adjusted. Now let me I'll be back in a second. Let me just check if there's a torque requirement on that. Those are, let's see. Yeah, there are. As you're adjusting these valves, basically the rocker arm adjustment, they call it the screw jam nut, 25 pound-feet, okay? So I got to crank that one down to 25 pound-feet, and I'm guessing that's a 14 millimeter. What do you know, lo and behold it is. So I'm gonna turn that guy. I want to make sure that I'm gonna make note of where my bolt is there, but let's go to 25 pound. I gotta go more. Okay, that's fine. I can go more. I'm gonna go to 25 pound-feet. Right there. Good. Okay, my screw didn't turn at all. Let me check my feeler gauge again. Let's see. Yeah, it feels pretty good. All right, so I have some clearance in there. So that one. Now let me just. I'm gonna check that one more time. I'm gonna back that off again. And it feels a little tight for some reason. Let me try that again. I don't want that to be tight. So I'm gonna back that off. Get my feeler gauge in there again. Oh, I'm too low, that's why. I was too low on the feeler gauge. It's gotta be up higher. You doofus. Alright, so right about there seems to be good. Alright. So I'll first start tightening that down. So my screw, I don't want my screw to move. I'm going to tighten the nut now. I'm just going to get it started. Here you go. Now I'm going to finish it with the torque wrench, and we're going to go to 25 pound-feet. Right there, okay? And we'll go back. I'm going to check this again. And it feels pretty good. I think I got it. I think I got it that time. Right? So many people don't understand pound-feet, but basically what you have is 25 pound-foot or feet is you're putting 25 pounds of force 1 foot out. Right? Now I know this is more than a foot, but basically this is set up, and the gauge is set up so that you're looking at pound-feet, but that's basically what it is. And if you have 2 feet, if you're torquing from a 2 foot distance, which you can with this, the rod would be this long, your force would be double, right? Because you're doubling from 1 foot to 2 foot. So that's how it's measured. Now remember, I just finished this one here. Remember, I know before I put the cylinder head on where top dead center is, right? And I showed you the chart, and I marked the ones that I know are not in tension. My top dead center. This one is not. This one is not. This one is not. This one is not. I can adjust all of those now before I rotate the camshaft 360 degrees. So I'm going to do the rest of them. I'll rotate the camshaft and I'm going to do the rest of them, get all the adjustments done on these.